A series on Hilchos Haitzah, the Shabbos, carrying on Shabbos. And there is an interesting discussion when it comes to minolim, shoes. A minol, what constitutes a shoe in halacha? Now we know there's Tisha beAv and Yom Kippur, we're not supposed to go out with shoes made out of leather, out of earth. So the shaila comes, what about shoes that are not made out of leather, but they're also comfortable? Are those an issue? Is that considered a minol? Is that called a minol? And this is also important for Shabbos, when a person goes out on the street on
like
Shabbos
crocks,
in a place where there's no Erev, right?
The crocks I am so uncomfortable in. I'm wearing
so you're wearing crocks or sneakers, something else, and it's not leather. So the big shaila, what comes up over here is, let's say if you hold at Yom Kippur that any shoe which is not leather you're allowed to wear Yom Kippur, it means you consider it's not a minol. It's not considered a shoe. If it's not considered a shoe, how on Shabbos are you allowed to go out with it?
Oh,
this is bothering a lot of the Rishonim.
Right.
If it's not a minol, then it's not a proper malbush.
Maybe it's just not a minol of leather, it's not a minol or, but maybe it's just...
There's only one gather, minol. What's considered a minol? So tonight, I want to first discuss, in order to come to Hilchos Shabbos, we first have to discuss Hilchos Tisha beAv and Hilchos Yom Kippur. What constitutes a shoe? This is also very important when it comes to these dinim. What is considered a shoe? And we know there is different Minhogim in Klal Yisrael when it comes to Tisha beAv and Yom Kippur. And then we'll see how the Rishonim and the Achronim carry this over to Hilchos Shabbos, to dinim b'Veitzah. So we'll start off like this. There's a Gemara in Yuma, and there's a three-way machlokes how to understand what is the maskana of the Gemara in Yuma. The Gemara in Yuma says like this: V'su kamibayluhu. They further asked Shaila, the yeshiva, Mahu lotzeis b'sandal shel sham b'Yom Kippurim. What is the din if one is allowed to wear on Yom Kippur a sandal shel sham?
What is sham?
Sham, the Rashi teaches gumi. Maybe today we would teach it rubber or something.
Rubber, yeah.
Amar Reb Yitzchak bar Nachmeni al Raglov, he stood up and he said, V'Amar I need Isis Reb Shua ben Levi sheyatzel b'sandal shel sham b'Yom Kippur. I saw him go out with a sandal sham Yom Kippur. It's not considered a minol. Halacha. V'aminolei b'tainis sibur mai, and I asked, what's the halacha on a tainis sibur, not on Yom Kippur? What's the din of a tainis sibur? Like you fast for Gshamim, where it also has you fast by night the night before, and it has a stat also Tisha beAv. Amalei lo ishna. There's no difference. You're allowed to go out by both. Amar Rabbi Bechana anidi isis Abelazar ben Minhog sheyatzel b'sandal shel sham b'tainis sibur.
What's the shaila? Your Yom Kippur is midaraisa, so if it's good on Yom Kippur, certainly it's good on time.
Fasting is midaraisa, but I think the shoes.
No,
It's midarabanan, I would think.
No, but that's a machlokes about it. We hold that it's also midaraisa, but it's the interpretation of inui.
Right.
What constitutes inui?
So they
Suffering.
say
So Chazal, the Torah gave it over to Chazal to define the inui.
Right.
But Chazal found psukim. This Gemara, preceding this Gemara, there's a Gemara which discusses where we learn out each inui. Where do we learn out that one is not allowed to bathe? Where do we know one is not allowed to be reichitz? One is not allowed to wear shoes? We learn out from different psukim that this constitutes inui. When the Torah in Tanakh refers to something as inui, so then we know it's an inui. Now we're here, I'm not sure, but Yom Kippur and Tisha beAv or Tainis Sibur have different reasons behind them. Yom Kippur is, to be like Malachim, and Tainis Sibur is Mitzad Avelos more. So there could be chilukim when it comes to different levels of Inuyim. I'm not sure. It's a good shaila. Why would there be a shaila? The Mara keeps on quoting Tanoim and Amiroim. I saw him go out and sandal shel sham and Tainis Sibur. And I asked him, What would be the din on Yom Kippur? Amalei Leishnav, there's no chilik.
Oh, you can do it.
If Yehuda nafik behitni, now we go to Ameroyim. Yehuda went out behitni with another type of one of these type of shoes. All these like shvacha shoes. Abayi nafik bedehutzi. Some of them is made out of palm branches, different things. The Rashi explains. I don't remember exactly. Rava nafik bedivli. Rabba Barav Huna Karech Sudra Kare. He wrapped around a cloth around his a kerchief around his feet. V'nafik. That's how he went out. Now, so we see from all this that this is Motor on Yom Kippur. The Gemara now is going to ask a question from a Braisa about a Kiteya. Kiteya is someone who, Rahman al-Islan, is missing a foot. So he has like instead of a foot, he has a fake leg like a stick, which he puts on a stick to at least should look like he has something there. So are you allowed to go out with it on Shabbos? So there's a Mishnah. The Mishnah is Machloikis of Meir Rabbi Yosi. Mesiv Rabbi Marchama. Rabbi Marchama asked, "Hakiteya in Masechah Shabbos we learn that a kiteya yoytze v'kavsh is allowed to go out with that stick."
Somebody needs it to walk, you're allowed.
This is not for walking purposes. He has a cane to walk. This is in order that he shouldn't look like he's missing a foot. It should look like, he's crippled, but he's not missing a foot. He has something there. Maybe, he covers it over with pants or whatever it is. You're allowed to go out on Shabbos, not considered carrying, according to the mayor. Rabbi Yosi asks him, no, you're not allowed to go out with this on Shabbos, with this stick. Vatani Allah, there's a Braisa was taught on this Mishnah, Vishavin, that both of the man and Rabbi Yosi would agree, Sha'asa lotzes by Yom Kippur. They're not allowed to go out on Yom Kippur. Meaning this piece of wood, on Shabbos, whether or not it constitutes Haitzah, carrying a Shabbos, is a machlekes between a mayor and a Yosi. But when it comes to Yom Kippur, a mayor also agrees that it's considered a minal, a shoe, and it's included in Isa v'snaf shishteichem, that you're not allowed to wear it on Yom Kippur. So it comes out, if you're not allowed to wear something of eitz, then why all these Amiroyim and Tanoim are wearing different forms of, it's not eitz, but made out of other materials which are not leather, and we're saying it's fine. Here we're clearly saying that the Yosi and Meir both agree that it's also the God to Kiteya with his stick on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara has two answers. Abaye and Rava. Amar Abaye. Just briefly, Abaye is not the Ikar sheet of the halachas of Rava, but Abaye says Hasan these speak sisin. It's a special case because there it's talking about that it had some cotton on top of the stick, so it made it more comfortable for him to wear the stick, so it's considered tainig. That's why it's also Yom Kippur. But the sandal sham and what all these other Mayroim went out with, the hitzni, the hutni, there's no problem with that. It wasn't tainig. If it's not considered a minol, just because you put some cotton in it, it's going to make it a minol. Right? Furthermore, is it also just because you have tainig, any tainig in Kippur, you're not allowed to experience tainig? No, it's only the specific chamishi inuyim, the hey inuyim that the Torah, that Chazal tell us, those are the things that include him in Nisim Snasheseichim. Not all forms of tainig. Just because he's comfortable, doesn't say in Kippur you're not allowed to be comfortable. It's not Tisha B'Av over here. You're allowed to be comfortable in Kippur. The last Amoyah that we read about wrapped around something around his feet, a sheet around his feet. So that's like cotton, and it made him feel more comfortable. And then the Gemara asks the Shaila from the Sefer, which we didn't read. The Sefer, we don't have the Sefer of that Mishnah in front of us in the Shabbos. So basically, Rava shlogs up Abaye. So Elam Rava. Only says Rava, Lo'olam, we're not going to accept this whole answer that we're talking about a specific case by the Kiteya, that there's cotton there, and this whole thing we're not going to learn. The answer, the pshat over here is Lo'olam, to Kula Alma Minhog. Everyone agrees, Saira Meir, Rabbi Yosi agree that a minol of the Kaveh Kiteya, of eitz, is considered a minol. Or b'Shabbos b'hapligi. When it comes to Shabbos, why are they arguing? Only in Yom Kippur they all agree it's a minhag, and therefore it's Assur to wear it in Yom Kippur. So why in Shabbos do they have machlokes whether or not you're allowed to go out with it on Shabbos? If it's a minhag, then Rabbi Yossi should also hold the kitei should be allowed to go out with the stick on Shabbos. Shabbos, it's only a derabbanan they're arguing about. B'hapligi. Mar savar gazrinan d'mushtamet v'asil suidalamas and mar savar loy gazrinan. Shabbos a technical machlokes. Be'etzem, you're allowed to go out with it on Shabbos. Both agree it's considered a minhag, and that's why it's also on Yom Kippur to wear it. However, why in Shabbos does Rabbi Yossi not allow a kitei to go out with it? The answer is because we're worried it would fall off. It's not considered something stuck on tightly. We're worried it will fall off, and because the person wants to hold on to it, he's going to pick it up and carry it, walk 4 amas, and Shus Rabbim is going to forget it Shabbos. So it's a gzeira derabbanan that they're arguing about. But l'oilam it's a minhag. In this, Rava, the halacha is like Rava b'chalal and Shas, besides for 6 places, Yal Kagam, 6 places in Shas, the halacha is like a Abaya. However, the shaila is, when Rava said this, there is a 3-way machlokes, what is the din over here? What did Rava mean? The Razah, Rabbeinu Zrachya Halevi, well, first let's start off with the Rif. The Rif Paskins, Rabbi Yitzchak Al-Fasi, the Rif Paskins in this sugya, the Rif normally he doesn't offer many words of his own. He usually just cuts out the Gemara, all the shittas which he doesn't hold our halacha, and he just quotes you an abridged version of the Gemara with the shittas al halacha. So the Rif, I don't have a copy of the Rif here, but the Rif just quotes all these Tanoim and Amirayim that went out with these different shoes, meaning the Rif holds you're allowed to go out with those shoes. Rava didn't say it out loud. Rava said, the Rava was coming to respond and say that Kavakiteya shall eitz, and that's a minhag. But everything else is okay. However, the Razah argues on the Rif and says like this: no, when the Rava came and said Kula Alma Minhag, everyone agrees it's a minhag, he meant to say that we do not agree with all these Amirayim. We have a Mishnah, the Rameir Rabbi Yossi, and the Brisa comments on the Mishnah that everyone, they both agree it's also to go out with this stick, this wood on Shabbos, so on Yom Kippur. And when Rava said all agree, La'olam Kulam Minhag, he meant to say that we don't agree with all these Amirayim that we mentioned earlier. It's a minhag. Hayos Tanoim hold that the stick, the Kavak Kitei, is considered a shoe. It's considered a shoe in Lagabi Yom Kippur. You're not allowed to go out with it. So the same thing as all these other materials here, the halacha is not like all these Amirayim. So that's how the Razal wants to interpret the Gemara.
Boy, how does he learn that in Rava?
It's very difficult, but he's a big. No one holds Mamashadas Yachid. When Rava said this, means we were choizer from everything before. Meaning because mikoyach the kasha, we indeed were choizer, and the Tanoim hold it's a minhag, Rameir Rabbi Yossi, and everything else that we mentioned earlier on is not the halacha l'maisa, because everything is considered a minhag. Sham, Hutni, all these different forms are sandals, of shoes, they're all problematic. Then we said that there's Rif, and then there's Rashi. The Rif and Rashi both agree that we don't learn like the Razah. We cannot interpret the Gemara like the Razah. And the halacha, when Rava came along and said that Kul Alma Minhag, he was not being choizer. No, we're not being choizer, and all these Amirayim did it's halacha. You're allowed to go out with this on Shabbos. Not only that, they both agree, the Rif and Rashi, in interpretation of the Gemara. They argue based on something else. They both agree when Rava said Kul Alma Minhag, Rava meant to tell you that only eitz is considered a minhag. Not only is leather considered a minhag on Yom Kippur, but also eitz. You're not allowed to go out with wooden shoes, with a wooden stick. Clogs, you're not allowed to go out with that on Yom Kippur. But everything else is mutter. Both Rashi and the Rif interpret the Gemara this way. However, the Rashi holds halacha l'maisa that way. Halacha l'maisa, he holds the way the Gemara and Yuma, that both leather and wood you're not allowed to go out with. Leather shoes and wooden shoes you're not allowed to go out with in Yom Kippur or Tisha B'av. Rif says that's taken interpretation of Gemara and Yuma, but based on a bunch of other Gemaras in Shabbos and in Yevamis, he learns that there is Chachamim, which the Chachamim disagree with Ramei and Rabbi Yossi, and they hold that even wood is not considered a shoe. This is the opinion of Ramei and Rabbi Yossi. Rav over here was saying the opinion of Meir and Rabbi Yossi. But according to the Chachamim, who are the Roiv, they're the majority, they don't agree with Ramei and Rabbi Yossi, and a minol shalait is not considered a minol, so it remains the only minol is a minol of oil. So let's just recap. We have 3 days when it comes to Yom Kippur and Tisha B'av, what shoes you're allowed to go out with. The Razah is very strict. The Razah says, we'll actually soon see a 4th opinion. The Razah says that everything is Assur. Not only leather, wood is Assur, and not only wood is Assur, but also all these other rubber shoes and all these branches. We could put into 3 categories. There are 3 general categories of shoes: leather shoes, wood shoes, and the 3rd category, the rubber and all these other shoes, which are considered even shvacher. Rabbi Zah says they're all Assur.
Who's the Razah?
Rabbeinu Zrachia Halevi, Reish Zayin Hey,
That's the
Baal Hamor.
Oh, the Baal Hamor.
Baal Hamor, yeah.
The machlokes of the Ramban.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Okay.
The Baal Hamor is the one who's always arguing on the Rif. And the Mochames, which is the Ramban, Ramban wrote a Pirush Mochames Hashem to protect the Rif, who was the Rebbe of his Rebbe. He went with the yeshiva of the Rif, that Mahalach, always to protect the Rif from the Hasogis, from the starke Kashas to the Zois that all, every time he could, get in a shot at the Rif. So the Mochames Hashem, the Ramban would always very stark defend the Rif. And usually the halacha is not like the Razah.
They don't pass.
The Baal Hamor, the halacha is usually not like him. It's not a klal, but he didn't make it a lot of times. Meaning Lepoil, most times Ruba the Ruba Pamim, his sheet is always nitcha.
Or like Shammai.
Now, also on the Baal Hamor is also the Ravid. The Ravid also has Hasagas a Ravid. Notes of the Ravid on also knocking the Baal Hamor for arguing with the Rif, but the Ramban did it much more diplomatically. The Ravid was a real kanoi, and the Ravid used to say it the way it was, the way he felt it was. And he used to say, right, a lot of times it's not worth the paper it's written on, and kol mini l'shoinis, which you couldn't believe. But that was the Mechamta Shal Torah.
Yeah,
you have like the Ravid and the Rambam also writes very sharp and everything. Right. That was his Mahalach and Avodas Hashem. So anyway, it was L'maisa. So the Razah holds they're all Assur. All the shoes you can now wear. You can't wear any of these shoes. Go out with socks. You can't wear any of these shoes. You can't wear Tisha B'av. Now, came along the Rashi. He's a little more lenient. He says only leather and wooden shoes are a problem.
Everything else no.
Because Rava said, we have a clear Gemara. Meir Rabbi Yossi both say that kava kiteya, which is made out of wood, is problematic. So wood is problematic, and leather is problematic. But everything else, we see all the Meiraim went out with these shalsham, these other types of shoes, these rubber shoes, and all these other shoes. Therefore, it's not an issue. The Rif is the most makel. The Rif and also the Rush goes with the sheet of the Rif. The Rif holds that only leather is Assur. Only Ur. It's not the way this Gemara and Yuma comes out. The Gemara and Yuma finishes off, it seems like wood would be Assur, like Rashi learned. It's true, the Rif also agrees with that. That's the way it's mashed in the Gemara and Yuma. However, Ramei and Rabbi Yossi are the minority opinion, and the Chachamim in other places, Medayik, that the Chachamim didn't hold it. They held there was no problem with wood. So those are the 3 main shitas. The Bach scratches out another shita. The Bach says that there is some Rishonim that quoted Tosefta. They quoted Tosefta, which says that Ampeloi socks are also problematic. Socks are also problematic, and the Bach says that that's the Iker shita. And he says, "Chein reisi etzor aboisai." So by my Rebbes, that they did not go out with socks on Yom Kippur. They went out barefoot. Yeah. That was that minhag then. So that was the Bach. The Bach The Taz, the son-in-law of the Bach, we wrote a Pirush in Shulchan Aruch, very, very stark, argues with his Shver over here. A lot of times he argues with his Shver, but over here he says that no one, it's so kilo removed that he doesn't say it's totally out there. He agrees there's some room for maybe saying such a thing, but very, very far. He says if you want to be machmer for yourself personally, and you're not allowed to be doirish v'pirka. You're not allowed to go up on a public shiur and say such a thing. You're not allowed to quote this chumrah barabim, like, and this is as if this is something that people could think, entertain of taking on upon themselves. Someone who knows about it wants to do it, yehila shalei. I think it's wrong, but for sure not to be doirish and v'pirka publicly. It's elam atmim and very sharp. So l'maisa, those are the three ikashitas, and then you have the sheet of the Bach. Now, the halacha l'maisa, who do we paskin like? The Beis Yosef says, Hayois, that the klal of Beis Yosef is, in general, that he made himself a bezin of three, the Rif, the Ram, the Rosh, the three major Rishonim. Whenever we had a dispute, he went like the Roiv of them. So you have here the Rif and the Rosh, hold clearly that only Ur is problematic, so everything else is mutter. You're allowed to wear whatever you want, only Ur is a problem. We'll soon see why. Why is it only Ur? What was the reason of the Rif and the Rosh? We'll soon see. L'maisa, the Rambam, Yisrael brings the Rambam. The Rambam doesn't speak clearly about the status of wood shoes. He says Ur is Assur, Kimovon. The Gemara says Ur is Assur, and the other end, the other extreme, a sandal shel sham. These type of rubber shoes and all these other shoes that they had then, these weak shoes, these shoes are mutter. But he doesn't talk about the middle case. What's the situation? The halacha of wood. Wooden shoes.
They didn't have rubber in the time of Chazal, so sham cannot be rubber.
I'm not sure. Gumi. What does gumi mean in time?
That's in modern Hebrew.
But Rashi says gemi. I don't know what gemi is.
In Rashi's time,
Aaron, isn't sham cork?
I don't know what it meant.
Isn't sham
There's no rubber
cork?
until later.
Cork?
I think so.
Could be.
In
Could be.
Hebraish. Aaron Alevi, isn't sham cork?
Yeah, that's one of the theories, yeah.
So cork they had then?
Isn't cork made out of wood?
It's
Okay.
a kind, it's a
It's gonna be
tree,
cork.
it's some kind
It's
of
a
tree.
soft wood, but it's not like regular wood.
We can take a look in the art school, see how they interpret it. Now, Lamaisa, so that we have the sandal shel sham. We'll call it shel sham to be safe. The sandal shel sham. So the Rambam's matter it, but he doesn't discuss the minal shel eight. So the Beis Yosef says the Rambam is dvar stumim. It's not clear which way he's going. What does he hold? Kinira, his comment is what is he going with wooden shoes? But he says, since I have a majority opinion, I have the Rif, and the Rosh that both agree only Ur is problematic. So therefore, I'm going with that Shita Lalach. And that's what the Torah Paskins, the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber, that only Ur is problematic in Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. Now, what is the reason why, B'chlal, for these different Inuyim, why are we saying certain shoes are also, certain shoes are mutter? The Rif and the Rosh don't say anything. They don't explain to us. They're busy interpreting the Gemara. They don't give us a line of reasoning. The Gemara itself doesn't give a clear line of reasoning for the different differentiations between these shoes, why we're drawing the lines in different places. The Rambam is the first, one of the Rishonim that's very clear with the Shita. There are other Rishonim also, but the main Shitas that are brought down in Shulchan Aruch don't explain themselves. The Rambam says like this. Let's take a look at the Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchas Shvis is also Yom Kippur. Also, lina minal of a sandal, you're not allowed to wear a shoe or a sandal, afila barag le'achas, even on 1 foot on Yom Kippur. Or motor lot is besandal shel sham v'shel gemi, you're allowed to go with these type of materials. V'chayoytze ben. V'koyer echad and beged al ragel v'yoytze ben, like we had the Gemara Rabbi Huna, you're allowed to go out with a cloth tied around your feet. Sharei kushi ha'aretz megil raglov. You feel the hardness of the earth. Omar g'shi yachiv. You feel that you are barefoot, like you don't feel protected.
So according to this, wood.
Atkan, what's negel in your name?
So wood would be Assur according to this.
L'chora,
Because wood,
L'chora wood would be Assur. L'chora wood would be Assur. Lamaisi, he doesn't speak clearly about it, but here's the one he offers a tam adover. Based on the Rambam's tam, when he gives us tam, we could think about wood, like my father's saying, and we could also start thinking about a lot of other shoes also. Nowadays, that we have so many comfortable shoes that are not leather, you don't feel the kushi haaretz, you don't feel like you're going yachiv barefoot. So based on the Rambam's mahalich, then these shoes should all become Assur. So the first one of the Achronim to talk about this was an early Achron, the Tshuvas Panim Me'iris. Panim Me'iris was a Meir Eisenstadt, sometimes called the Maram Ash. Aleph Shin is the Maram, is Marina Ram Meir, and Ash stands for Eisenstadt, the Aleph Shin, Eisenstadt. He was a nephew of a great nephew of the Shach. He's the first one who addresses it, a very classical tshuva sefer. He says, Al Chadashim Mikarev, new people have come, Asher Oislam and Olim Yibeget Shalavad. They're making shoes out of this material, Hakosha, of this hard garment. V'oisim meno kemidas min olav, Kutzurase, and they make it mamash like a shoe in the shape of a shoe. On the bottom of the sole, they put together a few pieces of levad.
What is levad?
Cloth. They should be 2 to 3.
As a heel, in other words, it's
Finger, it's boys high. Mishar hamino. Kedei sheyeh noyach leilach ben kederach minol shalar. Should be mamash like a minol shalar. These people are going. They're going on them sneakers. They're going on them in Yom Kippur and Tisha beAv. V'chein hoilchem like kehanim l'duchen. The kohenim don't remove their shoes. These shoes when they go up for duchening. V'leis man demashkich bei, and no one is saying a word to them. V'nira, he said, it seems to me the lav shaper avdi that they're not. This is not correct. Olavar din in order to explain this din, I need to go and discuss with you the whole sugya. And I'm only quoting a piece of the tshuva. It's a much longer tshuva. The tshuva, this bechlal, this whole sugya, carries us over to 3 sugyas in Shas. It's a very big sugya in Shas. Unbelievable. This whole sugya about shoes is a big sugya. The Prima Goda, one of the big poskim, called this sugya mukha, a very deep sugya. It's not a lamdish sugya, but it's just a deep sugya. In every single Gemara, you got to figure out what did the Makshin hold, what did the Metartzin hold, what was his Havamina, what did he hold, and it's 3 Gemaras based in Yavamis, Yuma, and Shabbos, and it has Hashlochis to Yom Kippur, Tisha beAv, Chalitza. We know Chalitza, you need to Cholza Nalei, she has to remove his shoe. What constitutes a shoe when it comes to Chalitza? It's a similar Machloikis. And also, when it comes to Shabbos and Mitzvah, which we're going to get to eventually, Shabbos, also the gay is what constitutes a shoe when I want to be walking out on Shabbos. Am I allowed to walk out with anything I want? With a slipper, with a paper slipper, who knows what? What constitutes a shoe if it comes to Shabbos? So this is intertwines these 3 Gemaras, and all the Rishonim have long, complex pieces back and forth, long Shakavatariya, and all these trying to piece together all these 3 Gemaras. So the Maisa, he goes into it a little bit over here, but he basically points out, let's take a look, the next line, the ending of the line, Lekach B'farish Rambam, Shekushi Ha'aretz Megia L'Raglav Amagushi Yachiv Yom Kippurim Loy Minoksiv Aleafinin to Inuksiv. He has a very important Yisoid the Panim Me'iris puts down. He says, I like the Rambam the best. The Rambam gives us a real good definition of what the reason for the Assur is. You need to feel the pain. You need to feel the ground. What's the svar behind it? He says, this is not epis. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah you're not allowed to wear, you're not allowed to wear a minol on Yom Kippur. By chalitza, the Torah used the word nal, the word shoe. So we have to define, what does it mean a minol? How does Torah define a shoe? What does Torah consider as a real shoe? When it comes to Yom Kippur, we don't need to define minol. It doesn't say anywhere a minol is us in the Torah. The Torah says v'nisim v'snafshi seichem inui. You have to feel pained. You have to feel you're not eating, you're not drinking, you're not bathing, and you're not wearing shoes. What type of shoes? We're not going to define it based on some interpretation of the pasuk. What is minol? It doesn't say anywhere minol here. We need to know what means inui. What means inui? Explains on pashit. If you're feeling the ground, you don't feel comfortable. You don't feel protected. You feel like you're walking on the ground. You're hitting. You feel the rocks, and you feel everything. Then that's inui. He said that over here. V'yom Kippurim loy minoksiv. The third line in the second part. Ela yalfinan the inui. We learn out from inui. The chsiv gabi David. It says by David. V'hoylech yachaf. He was walking on barefoot. V'karali inui. The pasuk calls that what David HaMelech was going when he was upset. Avshalom was rebelling and David was running away. He was going crying and he was walking barefoot. In order to, he was like mourning. V'karali inui. This is Kalash Anavi. Years later, Shlomo Melech talked about that time period that his father went through, and he called it Kalash Anavi. My father, and the suffering that my father suffered. So the Torah recalls that inui. In Cain, Gabi Yom Kippur, Kol Mashu Margishu Yachiv, Akush Yartz Megia Elov, Bechal Inuyu. Mashenkin Gabi Chalitza, the Chsiv Nal. By Nal, it says Nal. How do we know that Nal means leather? There's a pasuk in Tanakh which says Hashem's talking about how he's going to take the Yidden out of Golus. He's going to wrap them up. He's going to put them on like shoes of Tachash. The Tachash was the animal that they had then. Yeah, the Tachash. It was an animal, so it was leather. So the Torah terms now Tachash. So that's how the Gemara interprets what does it mean now. So says the Rambam, when it comes to Yom Kippur, and my pasuk, when it comes to Chalitza, it says now in the Torah. So I look for another pasuk. We see the Torah calls now refers to Tachash, leather, so it means to be leather. But when it comes to Yom Kippur, I'm not going to say only leather is Assur, but anything that's comfortable is Assur.
Oh, like the Rambam.
The bein in shalar by Chalitzi you need Alagabi Yom Kippur chashav hakoil now. Everything is considered a now. Kol midi the avdi the holchape. Anything which is made to walk with, veini margish oilch yachav also lots is bay. The Gabi Shabbos Bechlali says when it comes to Halacha Shabbos, has nothing to do with this issue of Minhog. Shabbos, you have to just determine whether or not it's going to fall off on Shabbos. If it's a regular fitted shoe, it's not going to fall off. Then what are we concerned about? You're not going to be carrying on Shabbos. So the Poyali says, we'll turn the page, and it finishes off the maskana of the Panamiris. Therefore, for sure, we have to be makbeh based on the Rambam. And by the way, the Panamiris says it's not only the Rambam spells out the reason, but that's most probably the reason of the Rush and the Rif. The Rush and the Rif said clearly only they said leather is Assur. Why did they say leather is Assur? Because you don't feel the kushiyaretz. But anything else that you don't feel kushiyaretz will be the same halacha. I mean, why do we want to make a difference? Since the Beis Yosef wants to differentiate between the Rambam and the Rush and the Rif. He doesn't want to bunch them together. He says the Rambam gave you the reasoning, and that's also the Rush and the Rif's reasoning. So once you have that, all three of them really agree, and so therefore that's going to be Assur. In Kain Kol Yarei V'Char to Hashem and Yerushalayim Yesh Lahachmer Shalotzes B'Minol Ha'asim Levadim any of this type of shoes V'Asim Kiminis Minol Shalonu Megan it protects the person and Margish Klal Shechor Leyachav the Lab B'Chal Inui this cannot be interpreted as Inui V'Hamachmer Tov Lebracha. Now, why does he say Machmer Tov Lebracha if he's so convinced? Right. He likes the Rambam. I think the reason is because Saf Kol Saf, he doesn't say Beferish, my own Svara, Saf Kol Saf, he recognized the fact that the Rif and the Rush do not say clearly their reason. And Lav Dafka, they agree with the Rambam. So when you have the majorities, the Rif and the Rush, and they don't say what's the reason why Ur is Assur, could be they hold that only Ur is Assur. Because we do learn out, they don't hold this whole Torah that the Panamiris laid out nicely. Although the Panamiris really enjoys the Rambam, and made a clear case for the Rambam Shita, and he also feels that it could be the Rif and the Rush also held at the same time of the Rambam, but he is not mafurish in the Rif and the Rush, and they're the majority, so therefore he doesn't want to say that this is mamish.
It could be there's another reason that a minol is an inyan of covet. it says that by the goyim, that meaning that if somebody is gonna walk in a goyish neighborhood on Yom Kippur or a Tisha B'av, and he can't, in other words, he can't help it because he doesn't want to walk.
I'll take another cup.
He doesn't. He doesn't want to go through a goyish neighborhood without a minol shel, or he's allowed to put on a minol shel or during that time. So he says that there is another inyan that if a person, at least in the times past, if a person walked around without a leather shoe, it was a inyan of busha. So that itself is inui. It was not to wear a nal shel covered is also considered.
We'll see. The Lamais is Azoi. You're bringing up an important point, which we're going to see something in a similar vein. This Mahalach. The Rambam gave a reason, but if we look around in other Rishonim, we could find there is other reasons mentioned. The Rishonim that were brought in the Beis Yosef just brought the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam, and the Rambam only gave a tam. But if we look around, other Rishonim do say other reasons. One of them is the Chidush Iran. The Chidush Iran says B'Shem Dera'ah of Aaron Alevi. It says it's in a sugi in Shabbos. Pirush Harav Aaron Alevi Zal the time of the Rabbi Yechon Menuri the Matar. The reason Rabbi Yechon Menuri's Matar shoes that are not leather, that they don't become tamei. Shemakiven the Shanalam in Mai the Orchei Lechashem. Since you have changed from the norm, you're not wearing the normal leather. Those are not leather shoes of the norm. This is not the orchei, so then it's not going to become tummy. The sandal shel eitz, the same thing would be a sandal shel eitz. The kivin the lav orchei lechashiv. V'chein pirush Rashi zav b'shem abaysav. The kaveres lav orchei lasim mikash imikinim uminol nami lav orchei meitzel ma'or. This whole sugi of Tuman Tara is connected to this whole sugi. Like, if you say if it's a shoe, then it's considered a keli. It could become tamei. If it's not a shoe, then it's going to be tar. So the Maisa, we see over here the svara that it's not. If it's not the orcha, it's not the norm. The normal shoe the way Chazal are, the normal shoe that people would wear, says the Ran, was leather. If you're not wearing the normal shoe, then that's not norm. So for that person personally, if you want to use the term of inui to explain it in the Torah of inui, we'll say that you're not, you're not doing the regular thing. You're being a little bit less comfortable because you really want to wear leather, and you look around. Most people are wearing leather even today. However, over then in those times, it could even be in the times of Chazal, it was even much more extreme. Because now we have so many variety of different types of comfortable shoes that they didn't have then. So it was much more the optimal thing. So that was the normal way to wear.
There's a din shchanach. You're not allowed dam shman esrei yachif. Why? You're only lifnei hamelach, so it isn't covered. So walking without proper shoes
makes you feel like you're not a mensch. You're not as mensch.
Bizayin, it's a bizayin.
No, bizayin. It's hard to learn bizayin because over here it's inui. It's your personal inui.
Right, I understand.
You're not mavaz of the Eibishter. It's over here that you're personally not as doing what you would like to wear.
Right.
You would like to wear something comfortable. You would like to wear what you normally wear. We're asking you to change your normal behavior, your normal pattern, not to wear your leather shoes that you normally wear, and to go wear something else. So that would be the inui. So this is another interpretation different than the Rambam. So according to this interpretation, the Chidush Iran, it wouldn't be a problem if someone wore a shoe, a comfortable shoe, as long as that's not leather which is the norm. It's not an issue. Even though you're not feeling the ground. The Rambam says, any shoe which you don't feel the ground, it's problematic to wear in Yom Kippur Tisha. According to the Chidush Iran Svara, it wouldn't be a problem. And that could be what the Rif and the Rosh held. Lav dafka the Rif and the Rosh held like The Pana Meira said like they held like the Rambam. It could be they held like the Chiddush Eran Svar. They didn't say clearly what their reasoning was. Furthermore, there's a third reason. The Prisha, one of the G'dayla Achroinim, the Prisha says, and I don't have a copy of it here, but the Prisha says on his Pirush on the Torah of the Beis Yosef, when the Torah writes and says that only Shal Oyer is Assur, he comments, why? Because it says in the Pasuk, V'nol Chatachash. He does use the Pasuk. He feels that you could take the Pasuk, but we have to look into Tanakh. We can on our own derive what's considered a shoe. Look in Tanakh, we see when Tanakh references a shoe, refers to made from animal skins, from leather. So therefore we have here three ways how we're going to go about doing. We have the Pasuk V'nol Chatachash, whatever the Pasuk itself's reasoning is. But we're going to base ourselves on a Pasuk. It says a Pasuk clearly leather, and that's it. It can't be Mechadish more than the Pasuk. The Pasuk says leather, it's only leather, nothing else.
No, maybe if the Pasuk is talking about a leather shoe, but that doesn't mean that there's no other kinds of shoes.
We have no other way of defining it, and this is based on his interpretation of the Gemara, that he understands. The Gemara does quote this Pasuk, by the way. But the Gemara quotes the Glabi Chalitza. But he understands that Pasuk is not only the Glabi Chalitza, it's like all cases. So the Chazal understood that was only that's considered in it. So based on the Pasuk V'nol Chatachash. Then you have the Chiddush Eran, which says anything which it's not based on a Pasuk, it's a logical thing. The Pasuk also could be logic, but it's a Pasuk. Once you deal with a Pasuk, you can't argue with the Pasuk, you can't make any shinuyim. When it's a Svara, so then you can say does it fit into the Svara or not fit into the Svara. So the Chiddush Eran says it's a Svara, it's not about a Pasuk. It's what does it constitute? Inui, you don't wear the norm. Usually you wear leather, you're not wearing leather. The Rambam says a definition that Inui means if you feel, you have to feel much stronger level of Inui. It's not enough you're not wearing the norm. You have to actually feel the hardness of the ground. You don't feel comfortable, you feel like you're walking around barefoot, you don't feel protected, that's considered Inui. So these are the three reasons behind. So therefore, it could very well be the Rif and the Rosh went with the Mahalich of the Chiddush Eran, or maybe they went with the Prisha's Mahalich that's based on a Pasuk.
When the Torah says by Moshe Rabbeinu, Shalna ne'alecha ma'al raglecha, by the snake, which shoes Moshe Rabbeinu was wearing? Leather or...
No. According to the Prisha, it was probably with leather. We don't know. Doesn't say.
There was no other shoes that time, but leather.
Sandal.
No.
Sandal them.
They had.
The Torah says the word Shalna ne'alecha.
We don't know. That's the question itself. What does a nal mean? What is by chalitza? V'choltza nal. More important than knowing Moshe Rabbeinu is what by chalitza we have to know what shoe. What happens if he's wearing a wooden clog? And that was the shoe that she was wearing a sneaker.
Is that called shoes?
Yeah. Okay, so halacha l'maisa, Rabbi say we paskin that only shal oyer is assur. However, if someone could be machmer, toiv lahachmer with wood, because since Rashi and Toisis and Rabbeinu Yeruchim, a number of sheets hold that wood is also considered a minol. So if someone could, it can be machmer with wood, but not more than that. You don't have to be machmer with the shoe. Let's take a look in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Ne'ilah sandal ketzad, wearing shoes ketzad, also lina minol shel oyer, the sandal shel oyer afilu ragle achas. One is not allowed to wear anything of leather, even on one foot. V'in chiluk bebeis v'shas rabbins, or chiluk whether in your house, you're in the street. B'chol mokim assur. Filu sandal shel eitz mechupa oyer assur. Even if you're wearing something made out of wood, but it's covered with leather. Leather on the top, also assur. Filu mishukitei, even a person who's missing a foot and he's wearing a stick there. Also, lubish kav shalei. He's not allowed to wear the stick if it's covered with leather. If someone's possible, best to be better machmer with eitz. What about all the other materials? And Halacha Gimel he says like this: Mutter linol sandal and minol shel gemi, shel kash, shal beged, shal shar minim, all these other materials. And now, what's the reasoning? The Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber in the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, the Torah, they didn't say a word about what the reasoning what for these dinim. But the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch always brings the timing, the reasons. The Alter Rebbe brings two reasons why you're allowed to go out with these shoes. He first brings the Rambam's Lashon, Shargushi Aretz Megil Raglav, or Margish Yachiv. You feel like you're touching the ground. V'oid, yeah, the second reason, Shalei Assur Minol, V'chol She'eni Shal Oyer Nikim Minol Malbush.
I just want to say.
And only were Assur Minol, and not anything of leather, only of leather. Anything which is not leather, it's not called a Minol, it's called a Malbush. Meaning, there's two reasons to be matter. Either we go with the Rambam Shita, or we go with the Shita, basically the Rif and the Rush, which never said the Lashon in the Rambam. So they're just saying anything which is Oyer is Assur, anything which is not Oyer is not Assur.
So wood, according to the first reason, should be Assur, and the second reason would be Mutter.
L'chora. I mean, that's the way the Panameiros understands it. It's not necessarily, The Alter Rebbe quotes that Shita because there's a Reini Yeruchim that holds by Tzal Sheikh Shemrachim. L'maisa, the shaila is, when you read the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and he gives you two reasoning now, which reason's the Iker? What am I going to do with sneakers today? If I go with the first reason, sneakers or the crocks, it should be a problem, because you don't feel the ground. Now, according to the second reason, only is considered called nikra minol. Everything else is called a malbush. It cannot be called intrinsically a minol. So then then it would be mutter to go out with these sneakers.
The thing that
But Alter Rebbe brings both reasons. So
I just want to say, he
Yeah.
says Sharei Gushe with a Gimel, Gushe or something, and the Ram said Kushi.
Yeah,
with
so this is a letter
from the hardness of it.
it's a letter of the Rebbe to deal with this kasha.
Yeah?
Yes.
No, I mean, I noticed it.
Oh, wow.
The letter of the Rebbe dealing with this gimel and the kuf over here, the switch.
And what does the Rebbe say?
The shaila is, we know one of them is either it's supposed to be the kuf or gimel. Let's not have a mistake over here in the girsa. But which nusach is the correct one? The nusach we have found in our version of the Rambam, the print or the version printed in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. So which one of the places is a printing mistake?
But you could be
And it's very
mechalik
easy
in the
when in a
meaning.
manuscript, a kuf and a gimel,
I would be mechalik in the meaning. I would say
Oh, really?
Gushe ha'aretz, the lumps of the ground, gush, and Kushi ha'aretz is the hardness. So even in sneakers, it could be you do feel more than you feel in a good shoe. You know what I mean? So, you could say the first
they make
thing could
sneakers out of
apply.
leather.
If you want to know,
Gushy, but gushy.
I didn't mention it, but if you want to, the Rebbe's medayik over there, and the Rambam's Lashon, it says, I don't remember all the diukim that he had. The Shiloh was whether or not Gushay's Lashon Rabbim. If you say Magia, Magian, what does it have to do with different diktuk over there to see? And he advises to look up early prints and to see what it is.
But you're definitely right that the Alter Rebbe had a different gears in the Rambam.
Well, we have to know if the Alter Rebbe also was incorrect here. So you have to look at the first printing of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch also. So everything could be, you don't know which one. Okay, it's easier to say there was printing mistakes in the earlier Tkufas, but there was also later Tkufas plenty of printing mistakes. So you have to see which one makes more sense and
So
look
you're
them
saying
first.
sneakers, it sounds like the Alter Rebbe is giving two clear reasons. The Alter Rebbe is not in doubt. The Alter Rebbe gives you two clear reasons. Not that the Alter Rebbe say Efsha this way or Efsha that way. The Alter Rebbe is saying there are two clear reasons.
Well, they
So
don't
you have to
coexist,
meet
the two reasons. So that
but you have to meet both criteria. In other words,
well, he's saying is that this one is for sure mutter because it fits both categories. What are we going to do when it's probably you're right. When it doesn't fit both categories, we're going to have a problem. Would be a suffix.
Well,
And
why would it be a suffix? The Alter Rebbe says v'chol she'einu shalor einu nikra minol el malbush is a very clear lashon. It's not. The Alter Rebbe says the word the oi, not like the Alter Rebbe says sometimes shomerim, or you could say this way, you could say that way. Here it's two very little the lashon.
yeah, but Alter Rebbe is talking about a specific case. He's saying these items are mutter because of this reason, and because they fit both categories.
Yeah, but it says.
So what happens if someone doesn't? What happens if someone doesn't?
No. But the second reason, v'chol she'enoi shel or einu nikra.
But that reason does not fit with the first
clear.
reason. That reason doesn't fit with the first reason.
They're two separate, different reasons.
Right. So, but what you can't.
Sneakers are not since they're not nikra.
But they're steer to each other. They're steer to each other to reasons. They don't coexist.
In other words, let's say you have a sneaker that you don't feel the kushi ha'aretz.
Right.
Let's say some.
So it
really
fit.
good
I'll
shoes
tell you another
and I
case.
don't have
Let's say you have thin leather.
Right. A very
Let's
thin
say you
leather.
have very thin
Yeah,
leather.
yeah.
You do
Thin
feel it.
leather, you can feel a
Does it-
gushe
Right. You don't
haaretz,
have a support.
but
the same
It's leather.
still, it's leather. So you have that case
so,
also.
So the answer.
You could be mekel maybe, meaning if you go according to the first reason, so then you could be mekel in thin leather. In the second reason, you clearly can't be mekel.
No, but he says lino
The way they make
shavel
even
lino
sneakers.
shagami kash beggar shar minam.
Right.
Sharei. I hear what you're talking, but he says it's
I was
not
once
leather. He
a
lists all the
dayan
other
on
things, and then
What?
he
I was
says
once a dayan
Sharei
on
kushay
Shabbos,
haaretz.
and they have a special chalitza shoe.
Yeah, when I was in high school, my
And
rabbi brought it.
That shoe, I don't believe that anybody would normally wear it. and the sole was very, very thin. So I think that I didn't fight on, but I think that if somebody would try to wear that chalitza shoe, they would feel the koshi haaretz, and certainly if they would.
There is a
I don't think
Sure,
that anyone
yeah.
would be make on leather. Leather is a clear gemara. There's nothing that leather's klar. No one argues on oir. Even if it's covered with oir, even if the bottom is made out of wood, if it's covered with oir, anything has a piece of leather on it, we ask it. Now, l'maisa. There are those that even want to be machmer even more. Now, those that want to be machmer to the, remember we talked about the Razah. The Razah wants to Assur even regular shoes. He wants to Assur. I mean, even what the Rambam wants to be matir, shal sham, or shal gemi. The Razah, if you remember, said that everything's Assur. It's all Assur. That's how he understands the Maskanas of Gemara. He's a Das Yachid. He's not mentioned. He's brought in the Beis Yosef, but he's not a majority. But it seems from some of the Achroinim were machmer for the shita of the Razah. Maybe Ikra didn't they hold like the Rambam that you have to feel gushi aretz, but they held on the street you can walk around with shoes that you feel gushi aretz like the Rambam. But when you get into the house, or you get into shoes, you should take it off and walk around with your socks. They don't hold like the Bach that you have to take off your socks. You don't have to walk around barefoot. But you're allowed to wear your socks, and this is based on a Chasam Sofer and based on a Munkatcher. The Hagoy Chasam Sofer, the Chasam Sofer says, "V'chein v'ikar leilach kol hayoyim b'am paloy to go with socks. V'shkas apim agadim. Shehoylach beruchoy when you go on the street, yelach b'minash levad. You should go with a cloth shoe hasuya, which is made in a way ba'oif and shemagish a karka l'mat meragla." He came by Rosh Rambam, Kamashkasam Haram Ash, the Palmi Iris, Shetvar Nochayim makes a lot of sense. So, Be'ikra didn't hold like the Rambam in the street, you should wear like the Rambam. When you come into a house, even you shouldn't even wear the shoes like the Rambam says. You should be machmer, he doesn't explain himself. But it seems that's like a chumrah. It's hard for me to understand if the Bechoishet for the Razah is Mamash Shadas Yachid. But they don't even, in the house, best thing is to go around the house in the shoe indoors. Don't go around with any shoes at all. Just go with socks. Same thing we have in the Minhog Chasam Sofer. It's brought down the Darkei Chaim V'Sholem that what would the Minhog of the Munkatcher the Beis Hamedrash B'Cheder Halach kol hayom rak ben paloi zokin araglov beTisha beAv. Ukesh
I think Zul.
Zulas kishalach achutza lavash kalochin fantafel. Only when he went outside, then he would wear slippers and other types of
Pantofel is a word in Yiddish for
slippers. Yeah, and kaloshin. Rather,
Chabad Minhog is not like that.
oh, so Lamaisa came out like this. There's two pratim. First of all, there's two pratim over here. The Chassam Sofer, and he quotes the Pri Megadim also, and the Munkatcher. Two things. They paskin that like the Rambam, like the Panim Iris, that you have to feel gushi aretz, right? Not like we saw that there's another way to learn. You don't have to learn everyone like the Rambam. The Russian Rif could be held on only leather and that's it. And a defining issue is leather. It's not defined by whether or not you feel gushi aretz. It's people normally wear leather, either because it says in a pasuk v'nal chatachash, or because it's the orcha to wear leather. When you do not something like the regular, you wear something not leather. That's already considered inui. But you don't have to go with the Rambam. But they were machmer like the Rambam, the Chassam Sofer and the Munkatcher, and they held that you have to. They pass like the Rambam. You have to feel the gushi aretz. However, in the house, in shul, they were machmer even more. Two chumras. They were machmer b'chalal like the Rambam Shita, and then they were like the Panim Iris explains the Rambam, and then they were machmer even more. In the house, you shouldn't even go like the Rambam, even more machmer the Rambam, and wear only socks when you're in the shul in the house. And you have some people that do the taka. Some people taka.
Say it's a bad simon. It's a bad mazal.
Yeah.
To walk around in socks.
Some people
Parents raised me like that. Never.
Yeah, because no,
My mother
because
went crazy.
my mother too.
went nuts.
My mother too.
I could take all the cookies from the cookie jar if I went around.
You know why? Because an oval wears socks.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
why.
that's why.
And that's why my mother was also very upset. She didn't
My
want her to
mother
go walk
also.
around in socks.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, no.
I wear socks only.
You have to also remember in Europe and everything, shoes was considered like, if you're rich, you had shoes, So for them, they're very scared, people from Europe and everything. So everything's about shoes and making sure eating, so they overstuff the kids and everything. Because, they starved and everything.
I think it was more connected
To the Avelis.
Rahman Islam to Avelis.
So the Mai says, like the Sefer Minhog Chabad, the Rebbe himself writes in the Sefer Minhag Chabad that our minig is not like the Chassam Sofer and like the Munkatcher. Our minig is not that way.
To take off.
What's the minhag?
L'chora, what he meant was to say, didn't mean to say, you have here like this. Remember, there's two chumras on what they did. Chumra one, that they held like the Rambam Shita, that you have to wear shoes that you feel the ground. Chumra number two, that they really want, that when you're in the house and you're in the shul, where you can get away with even that, you shouldn't even wear that. It's the two chumras. So when Sefer Hagi Chabad says, our minig is that we wear, it says we wear
non-leather shoes.
We're not makbid like these shitas.
The Rebbe
We're not makbid like these shitas. We're not makbid like these shitas. No, they don't wear sneakers.
What do you wear?
not
Yom Kippur?
sneakers like we have. Like
Canvas shoes.
Canvas shoes.
Tennis
right.
shoes, man.
Can.
Loose,
No, canvas shoes.
Like, these canvas
That's
shoes.
tennis shoes.
I think
Not
the
tennis
same kind of
shoes.
shoes.
That's what they call
Canvas
No, that's not what they call it.
Okay, all right.
No, these are canvas blue
Canvas
shoes. You know,
blue shoes.
No one plays
I have the
tennis in
same kind of shoes.
Yeah, I don't know if
I'm
you
not
play
with
tennis or
those
not.
shoes.
That's
No,
what,
they-
that in the shoe
They were
store
not
they
made
call
for
it
tennis.
shoes.
Can't play tennis.
No,
No,
you can't.
I agree, but that's
it's
what
very,
it was
very
called
schwache
when I was a
shoes.
kid.
Right. We used to call them sneakers.
Oh,
They're not.
sneakers.
Today they make
That's not
sneakers.
Real
Sneakers.
sneakers.
Today they make sneakers with
They're
leather.
shoes.
And shoes
These
that are
names-
handmade, that
No,
are
sneakers was
man-made,
like
not
the
even.
Converse All-Stars or Cats.
Right.
And those shoes that those
You're right.
adults wore, they call it tennis shoes. But yeah, I agree, you can't play tennis.
These were
in it.
canvas shoes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Allah Lamaisa, we in Chabad, there's basically in general there are two groups that I'm makel very much of this is in Brisk and in Lubavitch, are both very makel.
Just those two groups? The Velt is machmir on this?
A lot of the
You
Velt,
see the Velt working around?
no, they
all
come
these
to shul. A lot of them
sneakers.
come to shul and take off their shoes.
Yeah?
A lot of the Velt comes to take
Some
off their
people
shoes.
wear slippers. They don't wear slippers.
But you're allowed to. I can't understand why you could.
Now,
I
Lamaisa,
mean, you don't do it, but you're allowed to.
It's the same here.
a lot of the Velt holds, if you see the Chuvis, a lot of the Velt holds that crocks is problematic. I think Rabbi Yashiv a number of years ago came out with something that they asked him about crocks and he said it's problematic.
I mean, to wear on Yom Kippur.
They basically were
Why,
machmer.
is that too comfortable?
Machmer like the
real
Rambam.
crocks are
Because
very,
you don't
very
feel
comfortable.
the-
I never
you
had
don't
the real
They're
feel-
very hard,
The
strong.
earth.
Again, there's two chumras here. Not everyone does this chumrah where they wear, they're going to take off their shoes when they come to shul. But the chumrah that we should go like the Rambam shita, that you should feel koishi haaretz.
The
Most
canvas
kehilas,
shoes,
most
you
kehilas hold
feel
that
it.
way.
The
Exactly.
Rebbe's canvas shoes,
Yes, exactly.
I can be made because I wear those shoes. You can not
Where do you
feel
get
the
them?
ground.
Where do you get these shoes?
I got them
They
years
have
ago
it, they
and I
have
keep
it.
them. That's
Yeah.
all.
Twice a year.
And where Payless?
You mamish can feel, you mamish
Yeah,
can
so
feel
those
the
shoes,
ground in
those shoes you don't have this shoe. But let's say if someone wore a sneaker today, a beautiful, nice, comfortable sneakers.
And they're made
I
of
always thought
leather.
there
So
was-
there's definitely mucking for people to
Leather
taina.
is
I
mutter.
thought there was like some
The
big
people-
Right. No, but they have sneakers.
Non-leather
Today.
sneakers. There are people that there is a
They have
mukim.
a thing-
lahachmir.
Orthopedic. It's thick for
The
running.
Mokim Lahachmer is based on a lot of Rechoinim. You have the Panami Iris is Machmer.
Okay.
The Chassam Sofer says that he likes the Panami Iris Shita. The Munkacha was Machmer like that way.
But
The
you wanna-
Chassam Sofer quotes the Prima Godam was Machmer that way. So Lamaisa, a lot of the G'doi Lachroinim held
The fancy,
that
the fancy
sneakers would be
sneakers.
problematic.
Now,
Nice.
However,
Can I just say
there is a meaning of two kehillas to
But you
take
can't
on
make it Xer
in a way
any
that's
longer.
only Ur Dafke, even though the Alter Rebbe himself doesn't say that.
You have to say today, right?
That's what Rebbe
That
does
it's,
say.
you can't
Two
make a Xera She'ina Tzibi Yecholim Lamed Bo. It's an under door, so no one even knows what the feeling is to walk with the feet on feeling the ground. It's not a Betzias Bechlal anymore. So you can't now
When
say,
I
okay,
walk
everyone has
from
to wear
my
now
house
these
here,
kukaracha
and
shoes.
I'm
These
feeling the
kukaracha
ground
shoes,
in
and no one
those
knows what they are. No one wears them anymore. Maybe, relics. But no one has ever worn a pair of shoes.
But
that,
slippers, you could wear
Even
slippers.
flip-flops, which is the ultimate idiocy, that are like not even shoes. People that wear them, you don't feel the ground when you walk in them.
slippers. The slippers.
No, I'm saying slippers, you feel it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thin slippers?
Nah, today they wear sheepskin, they wear
Bedroom
Shirley
slippers?
slippers.
You wear it on the street.
Go on there.
I have
Wear it on the
slippers at home
street.
that are made out
You're
of
gonna
Wear slippers on the
leather.
street.
On Yom
if
Kippur
a
and Tisha
person
B'Av, are you going to feel? Are you going to feel protected when you wear that? Are you going to
No,
feel you're
my-
banking
You
it?
will not feel
My
protected.
slippers are Crocs.
I'm going to tell
Most
you
people today
also
wear
that
Crocs with
if
slippers.
it rains,
No?
But it's not the real
those
cracks.
shoes,
The
you're
real
in
cracks are
trouble.
Assur.
Like the thin shoes. It's also gushay haaretz.
Anyways, Lamaisa Rabbi said we have to already go to Ma'ariv, but we want to discuss how this all comes to Ilchas Chaitzah on Shabbos. So we now finished off discussing the dinim of Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. So you have that's Masakim. You have three Mahalchim. One Mahalach is the most kuladik shita, only leather and that's it. Don't bother me with anything else. Only Ur. Everything else is mutter, no matter how comfortable. And what will be the reason for that? We could either say based on the pasuk B'Anol Chatachash, only something which is from an animal, from leather. And by the way, in its Chaim from Chaim the Arizal, the Chaim Vital brings that Api Kabbalah Ur. It explains Api Kabbalah why Ur is Assur, only Ur, only leather. So you have reason to explain Api Kabbalah this. This is Mastama why Dominic Chabad was to be Mekel, Api Kabbalah. So Lamaisa, because why would we dafka be from the Mekilim? This is based on Kabbalah. So Lamaisa, you have a shita that's based on an Al-Chatachash, or you could say, because it's Lav Urchid, like Kedusha Shiran says, it's not the norm. Where there you could already start teaching that maybe today it is the norm to go out with sneakers, and is that the regular shoe that people go out to want to go out with on a regular day, or they only wear it for exercise, or when they're taking a walk, but normally they want to wear leather. But you say it's Lav Urchid. Then you have the shita, the Rambam. So that's a shita Mekila. It says anything which is not leather is mutter, either for those two reasons. And then you have the shita the Rambam that you have to feel gushi aretz. And a lot of the Achrayim are machmer on the shita the Rambam. And today, There are a lot of poskim that are machmir, and therefore a lot of Klal Yisrael is machmir. They will not allow you to wear sneakers or cracks. I never worn cracks, but if you don't feel the ground, then the cracks is also going to be problematic based on that mahalich.
Could there be problem?
However, in Chabad, we are makel with this, and also they say the briskers are also makel with, they're not machmir with the sheet of the
What's the
ram.
reason?
Then you have a next
What's the
step,
reason we're making?
next step to machmir, third level.
Said of the Kabbalah maybe because the Arizal talks about Oradafka as being a
Also, Pi
Poskim
Nigla.
also
not
say
a cool, it's a chumri, nothing to do with that.
The Poskim also say it.
Also Pi Nigla. Also Pi Nigla
Right.
because either we derive it from a pasuk in Tanakh, Lanocha Tachash, a dafke Tachash from is considered a nal, only from a leather. So as I state in pasuk, or we say it's lav orche, since the orche is leather. As soon as I go away from the orche, it's already enough. That's enough of an inui. I don't need to feel the gushi aretz. Like the Rambam defines inui as feeling the gushi aretz. The inui could be I'm not doing the norm. I normally put on every morning my leather shoes, and now I put it aside and I put on another pair of shoes. That's considered enough of an inui. That's all the yid has to be with star. That's enough to be inui.
Could
You can't.
be that a person has to be more machmir on Yom Kippur, maybe, because it's an Indian of the Araisa, and even if you say it's the Rabbanan, but it's Me'ein Daraisa because it's based on Ta'anu as
It's based on Daraisa.
whereas a Tisha B'Av is a Kuliyama is the Rabbanan, even though it's a serious thing.
And one more thing is you have the Samsoy for the Munkachas say that one should be machmir even more than the sheet of the Rambam when you're at home or in shul. Then you should take off even those shoes that the Rambam says are good. You should take them off.
Well, yeah, but then you go.
And I think there are
carpeting.
kehillas which do that also.
Yeah, but then you're walking on carpeting. You don't feel the ground. You feel the carpeting.
You don't have that comfort.
I think they did
Then you have the sheet of the
though.
Bach, which no one holds of at all. But the sheet of the Bach was that you have to mamish go barefoot.
Yeah.
Not allowed to wear socks. So that we don't. And he said that he saw Rabbi Yisrael going like that. He's Rabbi Yisrael. We don't go like that Bach b'chlal.
It's a kana. It's a
So then you have the other. Those days it was normal in the Middle Eastern country, places like that, and then still a lot of countries in the world. A lot of them are still walking around barefoot in
Imagine how
Africa and
before they
India.
invented Tanakh.
You know,
Their feet are a lot tougher, by the way. We're spoiled.
of course.
We never walk. They're walking
Sure.
the whole life, and feet are very
In
tough feet.
Africa, they always go barefoot.
Yeah?
Seder.
right. You know,
So now we have to bring it over to Ilchas Shabbos, and Mitzvah maybe next week. We'll bring it over to Ilchas Shabbos. The big child of Rishonim all is, even if you say you know that leather is not anything, not leather is not a shoe. Then how am I allowed to walk outside in Yom Kippur with it? You're not allowed to carry in Yom Kippur also.
No, but we say it's a
not allowed
malbush.
to
A
get-
malbush is good.
Exactly.
And it says
Still
here in
malbush.
Russian.
It may not be a
that
shoe, but
that's
it's
not
a
a shoe.
it's
That's
underwear.
That's the Alter Rebbe's mahalach.
Not less than
Yeah.
Alter
underwear.
Rebbe's mahalach is even if we don't say it's a minol klapi Yom Kippur, but I'll say it's a minol for Shabbos
it's
purposes.
somewhat Megan. It's somewhat.
Yeah, the
Megan.
Alter Rebbe was mechaven with
Sure.
this to.
You won't get barefoot. You won't get athlete's foot.
The Alter Rebbe was mechaven with this to a Rashba, which he did not see. The Chiddushei Rashba, the Alter Rebbe did not see. Only later on in his life he saw it. In the early Alter Rebbe did not see it. Later on he changed some of his shittas based on that he saw the Chiddushei Rashba. So Alter Rebbe in the scene was mamish mechaven to the Rashba. He doesn't use the same words as the Rashba uses, but it's the same mamish similar mahalach as the Rashba. But in the other Rishonim have different birurim. Different birurim. The Ramban says, "Ein echanami, you're not allowed to go out with these shoes on Shabbat, on Yom Kippur." The Ramban says it's a problem. The Ramban and the Ran. The Ramban and the Ran both hold that no. The interpretation of minol, if it's not a minol for Yom Kippur, it's not a minol for Shabbos.
You're not allowed to wear a sneaker.
However, so the Ramban says you're not allowed to walk out of your house. If it's leather, so you're not allowed to walk out of your house with it. It's carrying. It's not a minol, so you're carrying. What are you doing?
You're protecting your feet from
From
disease.
Torah only terms a minol leather. You can't walk out with an Yom Kippur. That's not a shoe. You say you're wearing a shoe. Torah says it's not a shoe. You
It's
hold
not a
for a
shoe.
shoe.
It's not a shoe, but it's a sock. Who says you can't go out with socks?
Malbush. Why
very
is it
good.
depending on a minnow? It's a malbush.
What?
Malbush and minnow is two different things.
You said this?
This is the way that Ramban
It's a sock?
holds. The Ran has a very big chiddush. The Ran says like this. The Ran says that has a beautiful chap. He says, true, it's not considered a minnow. Because Chazal, when we say that only leather is a minnow, means anything non-leather is not a minnow. However, since on Yom Kippur, all of Klal Yisrael is not allowed to wear a minol shel oyer, comes out for this day. What is your minol? Your minol is anything not leather gets the status of a minol. Because that's the middle of the day.
You don't have to come on to that.
What's
Just
that
say it's a
issue of the
sock.
day?
You don't have to come on to it.
But on Shabbos
Sock,
itself,
whatever it is, it's
A sack is a sack.
a band-aid. Are you allowed to wear a band-aid on Shabbos? Are you
But
allowed
a
to...
sack is a sack. A sack is being a sack. In shoes, there's different types of shoes. We all call them shoes. But Chazal say only a minol is a minol. You aren't allowed to walk on Shabbos with a pair of sacks and with minolim.
Listen.
You want to walk out with
Why
sacks
are you allowed to wear a
and
yarmulke and a hat?
Who says it's totally?
This is a hat and this is a yarmulke, right? I go out on Shabbos with a yarmulke and a hat. Why can I wear both? Because they're both malbushim. Why can so when I go out on Shabbos, I have a sock and a shoe. You want to tell me that today I'm not wearing a shoe? Fine, so I'm wearing a sock. You can't say I'm not-
Rubbers,
yeah. You see, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to say, oh, it's not a no. So you can't go out with it. It's a sock.
don't shoot the messenger. He's only telling you what they
I'm
are.
not shooting nobody. I'm
Last
shooting,
week we
I'm
said
trying not
that
to
it
shoot
was
myself.
Megan.
the problem is, you think like this. I understand what everyone's saying, and that's what we hold the halacha. The halacha is like what you're saying. But the Maisa, the Ramban did not learn this way. So you have to understand the svara of the Ramban.
Yeah.
Fight with the
You understand the
Ramban.
Ramban based himself. The Ramban based himself on the Gemaras. Shaila, the Rishonim don't want to say their own thing. They're here to interpret the Gemara. This is how he interpreted the Gemara. That the sugi of Shabbos, you understand, inside the Gemara's lashon, it's mashna that they're one and the same. The status of minol and Yom Kippur and Shabbos is one and the same. We have to understand the logic behind it. The Alter Rebbe comes with a chap and learns Pshat in the Gemara differently and says that they're two separate sugis and don't mix them together. But Pashas, if you're learning the reading of the Gemara, it's logic, you could go that mahalach. If you read the wording of the Gemara, it seems that Yom Kippur and Shabbos are the same status. If it's a minol for Yom Kippur, it's a minol for Shabbos. But if it's not a minol for Yom Kippur, it's not a minol for Shabbos and have a problem with Eitzah. You're not allowed to take anything you want. You know, people will go out when there's a snowstorm, so they go out with a bag over their feet. You have to ask a Rav. Are you allowed to take a shopping bag and put on your feet? Not everything we do means you're allowed to put on. You're not allowed to go on the rain. The Gemara says you're not allowed to take a box to cover yourself in the rain. Are you allowed to take garbage bags and wrap yourself? Hitzah and Shabbos, Malbushim have definitions.
Yeah.
And the halachic definitions of them. And therefore we have to look in Shulchan Aruch to see the halachic definitions. So the Ramban has a...
Right,
the
you
way
can't say just because it's not that, therefore it's carrying. You want to tell me that a shoe is not a shoe. So therefore, it doesn't mean I'm wearing a shopping bag on my foot.
I'll tell you one thing. Maybe
just
it could be
because it's not a shoe.
to
It could be I'm wearing a rubber band.
Mekayev the Ramban a little bit more to Elaseichel. In those days, they didn't have such comfortable, nice shoes like we have, non-leather shoes like we have. So anything which wasn't leather was a shoe. What type of shoe was a wood shoe?
Yeah.
What was a cork
Straw.
shoe?
It was straw.
It was straw. So therefore, you can't really call this a normal malbush. So basically, the Ramban is saying this is not a minol. Well, what is this? This is some type of crude thing that you're calling this a shoe. That's not a shoe. You can't just take a
One man's cash is another man's trash. So a guy who trashes his wicker basket sofa for another guy, he's going to make shoes out of it.
Yeah, but you can't put...
Has to be the derech. Has to
No,
be the
but you
derech.
can put kash. Kash you can make shoes out of. People wear straw shoes. Why not? If that works for you, it works for you.
If that's the derech, then
Works
you
for
can
him.
say that.
It's
That's the
the
derech.
minute.
If that's the derech. If that's the derech.
Yeah, it
If
is.
the derech was not...
in New York, you have every stratosphere of minhagim. So they got people coming Bangladesh. They use
Yeah, I know, you can't.
They use straw shoes.
You can't be...
A lot of them don't wear shoes.
You can't base it on the Shagoyim. You have to have a group. You can't say homeless people. Homeless people go out without clothing. So if you're not going to go out with clothing on Shabbos. No, you need a group. The Gemara does say, Lamashal, if the Royim, the shepherds, go out with certain material and during it rains, that makes a mutter for everyone else. Because you take a certain group. If you say that there's a certain group, even if they're a minority group, but there's a large amount of people that do it that way, you could say it.
That's right.
You know, they say that the Queen Elizabeth one time came to visit a center of mentally ill people, Mishagayim. Anyway, so one of the Mishagayim said to her, you know why you are on the outside and we are on the inside? He said, because you're the majority and we're the minority. But if we would be the majority, you wouldn't be normal and we would put you inside.